Healing sounds cute on Instagram, but in real life, it's awkward, it's annoying, and occasionally it can ruin dinner. Because when you grow up with alcoholic parents, you don't learn how to communicate. You learn how to survive moods. And that survival mode is exactly what's keeping you stuck today. Here's what nobody tells you about the messy side of the work. Hi, I'm April.
And I'm Joseph, and this is All the Way Up, where we talk about all the things you're actually dealing with after an alcoholic upbringing.
So, one thing that I've had to deal with, or one thing that I continue to struggle with, is reading rooms and also getting this feeling in my chest when something brings me back to the vibe of growing up. So, growing up with my mom and my stepdad, I could tell what kind of day it would be by when they got home. If my mom brought friends home, that meant that it was going to be a long night, and me and my siblings were probably going to end up in a hotel room with my mom because her and my dad would be fighting. What was it like for you growing up when your parents would come home party? Well, your parents never went out; they drink at home.
Yeah,
right?
they drink at home. Like our house was a club, our house was the bar. More so my mother than my father. My mother was a heavy drinker, strictly because she drank liquor. My father stuck to beer. So he would go to sleep early the majority of the nights, and I would have to deal with my mother.
What would she do to you?
Oh, it was rough. Like she would bring up things from her past and from her childhood, and would speak those things.
She would trauma dump on you while she was drunk.
She would, and she was also very abusive as well. Hitting me for no reason, having me clean up rooms, and uh, just things that weren't normal in our home.
I think everything is normal until you start talking about them, and then you're like, I didn't grow up like that. For me, I didn't realize that I thought everyone grew up with alcoholic parents. And I know you and I have talked about that. We were basically living the same lives, we just never communicated. And I think because partly I never told anyone what went on in my house because that was drilled into me. My mom would say, "You don't tell anyone what goes on in our house. What goes on in our house stays in our house." And so I wouldn't go home and say, "My mom's an alcoholic," or "My mom's hungover today," even though like more times than not, I was the one person who didn't have a parent at my performances because my mom was at home hungover. And there were plenty of times where my older sibling would drive me to school or drive me to ROTC practice because my mom couldn't. She couldn't. She was too hungover or too drunk. And I didn't get the abusive part per se. Like she wasn't abusive physically, but she was more mentally abusive, like abusive to the point where I had parentification. So it was my responsibility to take care of my other siblings because she was too hungover to do it. There were times where I had to put my younger sibling on the bus for school. And if I didn't wake up on time, I mean, this happened from like junior high school to high school. If I didn't wake up on time to put my sibling on the bus, then my mom would say, "Well, you're not going to school today either. If she missed the bus, you're not going to school because who the hell is going to take care of her? I'm sick," AKA meant she was hungover and she wasn't going to take care of her child. So she put that on me. And so one thing that I took from that is when I had kids, I swore I would not ever be drunk enough where I couldn't take care of them.
That's a big responsibility for someone your age, being that young and having to deal with that.
Yeah, but that's something that I just realized wasn't normal, and I knew what normal looked like because my mom was the only person in our family that drank. And I don't know, was that the same for you? Like my aunts and uncles didn't drink and my grandparents didn't drink.
No. My aunts drank. My aunts and my uncles drank. So for me, watching everyone within that family, it was the norm for all of us. Mm-hmm. For all of my cousins and myself, that was the norm. Having to deal with my mother, though, was really, really hard for me. I mean, I only lived there for maybe 5 or 6 years before I made a decision to move out on my own. I was ready to move in with my grandparents as soon as I
Yeah, you moved
possibly
in with
could.
your grandparents before you were 10, right?
Yeah. I was like 9 and a half going on 10. I just finally made a decision at that age on my own, like, grandma, grandpa, can I please come and move with you?
And I think one thing that no one talks about when you grow up with alcoholic parents or abusive parents or parents that neglect you, because right, that's what alcoholism is, that it causes neglect, because all you care about is getting drunk. And I don't know that firsthand because I am not an alcoholic, but I know that firsthand because I grew up in an alcoholic home. So for me, that whole neglect thing, it did steer until my adult life. And so now I'm able to catch that feeling in my chest where I'm like, something's not right. Something is affecting my adult life that takes me back to my childhood. So like that neglect caused me to become an adult overnight.
Right. And I think that happened to me as well. I started working at a young age. At the age of 12, I was working, and I was in survival mode. I was in a position where I had to take care of myself and I had to do for me, and there was no one coming to save me. And that's how I felt as a young boy. Like I was already becoming a man, and I had to stand on my own 2 feet and do what I had to do to take care of me, because no one, I couldn't cry out to anybody, couldn't tell anyone what was going on. Matter of fact, I think this is probably one of the first times that I'm actually speaking about this.
So it's like being robbed of your childhood, right? So I joke and say I became a mom at a young age because I had to take care of my younger siblings, and I know you did too. But you actually became an adult when you had your firstborn at
Yeah,
a young age, right?
yeah.
Because no one, like, do you think that you became a parent as a way out, or I mean, obviously teen pregnancy, but
Teen pregnancy.
subconsciously, subconsciously. Because did anyone ever tell you what sex was, or you just went out and had it? Like, did your parents sit down, or they didn't really care what you were doing because they were partying?
Yeah, they really didn't understand what was going on in my life. Like I was leading my own life, and I think at the time I was looking for something that I didn't have. It's simply love. I wanted to know what love
Or
was, and
maybe you thought, like, I'm an adult, I can have kids.
yeah, well, no, that kind of just came and it happened. But at the time when I was having a child, like during those 9 months, like I was preparing myself to be, a full grown man, and
And
not.
how old are you when you?
I was 14 years old. You know,
Wow, that's crazy.
yeah,
Yeah, I think subconsciously too, just being a young mom myself, it's a means to get the hell out of this house subconsciously, because I took care of my siblings until the day I got kicked out. And it was just like, well, let me just go have my own baby. I mean, that's what I was used to. I just thought that's what you did. And my mom never said, I mean, she was just too busy absorbed in her own life that she never was able to teach me right from wrong,
right.
or how as an adult, if you wait to have kids, you could have better opportunities for you. Not saying that I regret having my children, and not saying that you regret having your children, but if they would have came later in life, they probably would have had a little bit of upbringing, a little bit of better upbringing, at least for me.
Maybe.
um, so that's the messy part, right?
Yeah.
The part that no one talks about. I think even now, with us being in our 40s, it's difficult to go and say, like, everyone coins, oh, my parents, they were terrible, or my parents were whatever. I grew up poor. I grew up on food stamps. I grew up, but it's harder to say, like, yeah, I was all that, and also a grown ass adult at 6 years old.
Yeah, that's a lot to deal with. So I was fortunate enough to get out of that situation at the age of 12. I was, to be honest with you, I was happy working, and I was happy working after school.
Because it was your escape.
Yeah, I was working 6, 7 days a week. And
But you realize now that that's not normal, right? Like, you realize being 12 years old and working is not normal.
it's not. No, absolutely not. It wasn't normal at all. And for my parents and my grandparents to be okay with it, and that's another subject for another day. But having to work at that young of an age and dealing with everything that I was dealing out with outside of that, coming from parents, a home that had parents who were alcoholics, it affected me in more ways than one.
Yeah. I feel like there's a lot to unpack in that healing process. And one thing that we can say is that one, we recognize that our upbringing was a little bit abnormal. Two, our parents were doing the best that they could with what they had, right? I
Absolutely.
know for my parents, seeing them as individuals, they were just living the lives as, kids that were raised in the 70s. Um, and also, I feel like because we grew up in the same part of town, that's what all of their friends did.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's what their community taught them. And so I think for me, in middle school and high school, I chose to do different. In middle school, I made, just like you made yourself busy with working, I made myself busy with cheerleading in middle school. And then in high school, I made myself busy in ROTC. And that was my outlet. If I could just stay at school long enough until my parents went to work, then I wouldn't have to deal with the pregame,
Yeah.
right?
Yep. That's understandable. And for myself, growing up and playing sports, like football was everything to me, simply because I was able to let out a lot of that anger and the stuff that was embodied in myself, hatred. I was always pissed off. I was always in a bad mood. And this was the time for me to be able to unleash that, which was every day during practice.
And so for today, as an adult, for me, one boundary that I've set for myself and for our family and for our home and our marriage to work is that even if it makes us look like the bad people, like I don't care. I don't care if people say we can't go to their house because they don't drink, or we can't go to their house because they don't party like we do. Like, we want people to come hang out. And I'm not saying that drinking is bad. We occasionally do want a margarita and we occasionally do want to drink a glass of wine. But I think for me, it's just realizing, okay, this is enough. Like, this is a hard boundary. We're not going to have you act crazy at our house. You have to leave, even if that means I'm going to cut you off.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think also not only setting that boundary for others, but we're also setting it for ourselves as well. We're holding ourselves accountable for what we want in life and how we're going to start moving forward in our day-to-day activities and how we raise our children, our grandchildren, and how everyone sees us. It's important to us.
Right. And so if you find yourself in that messy part right now, and you find that that messy part is actually a sign that you're winning, then our hats off to you. Because one, acknowledging that the trauma happened is the first step, right? It's like the 12 steps of recovery. Even though I've never taken a class, I've YouTubed the 12-step recovery. But it's like acknowledging that there was pain there. And it doesn't mean that you're saying your parents were nothing. It's just acknowledging, hey, you hurt me, or I was forced to raise myself, right? I mean, you could
Yeah,
correct me
absolutely.
if
I'm
I'm
still
wrong.
upset myself about it.
Yeah. But I think in healing, it's one, you have to acknowledge the hurt. And two, you have to be able to be willing to be willing to be willing to forgive that person. For me, I'm not able to go to my parents and say, my dad in particular, because he died when I was before I turned 20. So I can't go to my dad and say, you hurt me when you did this. And my mom is now deceased as well. But I was able to tell her, like, you did this to me and it hurt. Even if she denied it, I was still able to voice that to her. And so if your parents are deceased like mine, or if your parents are still living like Joseph's, maybe you want to write them a letter and acknowledge that pain. Whatever the first step is for you. For me, it was a lot of journaling.
Same for me. Journaling was really, really big for me, but also therapy as well.
Yeah,
Therapy worked for me. Yeah. Several years of therapy.
And this is before YouTube. So.
Yeah, most definitely.
Yeah.
So you got to be able to be willing to just to be honest with yourself and where you're at in life, and know that it's okay to ask for help. It's okay to step out of the norm and be the first one in your family or your household to be able to ask for help. There's
To
nothing
break the
wrong with that.
generational sins, to break the generational curses.
Yes, yes. I think we're at a stage now in life where we're smart enough and that we understand there's enough out there. It's accessible. It's easy for us to grab at. I mean, everything that we want is pretty much right here in front of us. You know, the help that we want, the help that we need, the help that we ask for, it's right here.
And it's just it's one day at a time. It's one breath at a time. It's 1 minute at a time. We just want you to know that you're not alone in this. And however you had to survive your alcoholic parents is what you had to do. We want you to know that your feelings matter, that you're valid, and that there is hope and there is healing. You just have to want to start, or you just have to want to accept that grace or extend that grace.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what this channel is for. Like, we're in this together, and the best thing about my wife and I is that we're honest about, where we come from, where we're currently at, and where we're going.
He's more open than me. I'm more private. So I only talk to y'all, my internet family.
I talk to everybody.
Okay. So we just want you to know, if you're breaking down the full survival road to healing roadmap, hit that subscribe button and join us, because we're talking about all the things that most people are afraid to talk about.